speaker, our final topic, is about talking to strangers, something I've been doing a lot of today, and some of you might have been as well. And our final speaker, though, is not a stranger to me because we've been working together on a huge study called the Kindness Test, which was an online study on the topic of kindness. I launched it on both the BBC radio programmes I present, and then we waited to see what would happen, and a staggering 60,000 people took part in it, making it the largest study of its kind to be done. And a key member of that team designing the study was Gillian Sandstrom. She is Senior Lecturer in the School of Psychology, and she is the new Director of the Sussex Centre for Research on Kindness. And talking to strangers, as we'll hear, is linked with kindness. It's one way of increasing the amount of kindness in the world, and Gillian is going to talk to us all about it.
Hello. In June, I visited the Lake District, which, as you probably know, is a 6-hour drive north of Brighton. I walked up Walla Crag. There was a beautiful picture, you're going to have to imagine it. And just before I reached the summit, I passed 3 people who were all walking together. And I stopped and I said, hello. And we had a little chat. We talked about where we had been walking that day. We talked about the big military plane that had just flown over. We talked about orchids. It turned out that these 3 people were from Brighton. 2 of them had actually worked at the University of Sussex, and the third at the University of Brighton. And they invited me at their regular time for a drink at the Swan, just around the corner. So a small world, isn't it? And like Claudia said, my name is Gillian Sandstrom, and this is one example of hundreds and hundreds of chats that I've had with strangers over the many years now. I work in the School of Psychology, and I study minimal social interactions like these. And today I'd like to make the case that you, too, should talk to strangers and that it can make the world a better place. So I bought new hiking shoes before I went up to the Lake District. And buying shoes is, it's a pleasurable thing for some people, but not me, because I have always had gigantic feet. Now, don't everybody look at once. Back in the day when I needed new shoes, my mom would have to drive me into the city, a 1-hour drive, to the one shoe store that had shoes that would work for me. And thankfully now I can just order shoes online and they get delivered straight to my door. And when I bought the shoes before I went to the Lake District, I even had more than one choice. It was amazing. And it's so much more convenient and efficient and accessible to be able to buy shoes in this way. However, there might be a trade-off that we're overlooking, because if I don't go to the shoe store, then I won't talk to the salesperson there. And they might reassure me that actually my feet are not so ginormous. I won't talk to the other customers who might tell me, oh, there's a new store on the other side of town that also has shoes for people like us. And I won't talk to the parking attendant who maybe has a cheery smile and a sunny disposition that puts me in a good mood for the rest of the day. Now, not having to talk to these people might seem like a good thing, right? For those of us who are socially anxious, which probably includes many people sitting in this room, but when you don't have these minimal social interactions, your social skills get a little rusty. And then it's like a tiny step from there to thinking, maybe I don't have any social skills. And then another small step to thinking, maybe everybody can see that I don't have any social skills and they don't like me. And then one more baby step to thinking, I'm just going to avoid these social interactions altogether. And then what we have is a loneliness epidemic. So as well as interacting with fewer people these days, we have prioritized efficiency to such an extent that we don't even notice the people that we do still interact with. So if you go to the coffee shop, barista is less a person than a barrier to your morning caffeine hit. And I'm here today to argue that we need to rehumanize these interactions, re-engage with people, and people all around us, at school, at work, in the shops, online. They're all around you right now. Now, I'm an unlikely person to be standing here encouraging you to talk to strangers, because I am a serious introvert. When I was a kid, we would see my aunt and my uncle and my cousins once a year at Christmas. I would take a book and find the quietest room in the house and spend the whole time reading. My dream was that I would grow up and live on my own little island because I just didn't know what to do with people, and I still feel that way a lot of the time. And yet, here I am, encouraging you to talk to the person, the grocery delivery driver, to talk to the person waiting next to you in the queue, to talk to the person sitting next to you on the tube. Yes, really. And I'm encouraging you to do these things with the zeal of a convert because I didn't start doing these things until I hit my 30s. And until then, I never would have guessed that it could be so enjoyable, so meaningful, and so transformative. What happened? Well, one day I was on the subway in Toronto, and I saw a woman sitting across from me who was carrying an absolutely gorgeous-looking cupcake. And I couldn't help myself. I commented on her cupcake, and we got into a conversation, and by the end of the conversation, you've seen my picture now, she had taught me that people can ride ostriches. Now, how did we get from a cupcake to ostriches? I have no idea. But that's the beauty of a conversation in a nutshell, isn't it? Since then, I've had so many memorable interactions with strangers. I've been given free vegetables from someone's allotment. On holiday, by following the advice of strangers, I've had the best fish and chips in Pembrokeshire. And I've visited places that are not in any tourist guidebook, including a tiki bar in Paris. I have, returning from holiday, I spoke to the people waiting in a giant queue for the Eurostar, and a very lovely couple gave me and my husband a lift home that saved us from one of those dreaded bus replacements late at night. I've met really interesting people. I've met a theatrical wig maker. I met a man who was on the tube after setting up for the fireworks for New Year's Eve in London. I've talked to children's book authors. One day I talked to a professional cellist on the tube. And partly because of that conversation, I started to take cello lessons. And now I play with an amateur orchestra, and I'm just so thrilled to have the joy of making music with other people. And I might have waited until someday if it hadn't been for that conversation with a stranger. My research and research by others has found that minimal social interactions like these put us in a good mood. But more than that, they make us feel connected to other people. They make us feel more trusting of other people. And these effects accumulate slowly over time, so they might be a little more difficult to see, but I think they're the biggest benefit of having these kinds of interactions. And so after lots of memorable conversations with strangers, but also lots of unmemorable ones, I know that I can talk to almost anyone and that people are generally friendly and kind. So look, I understand why people don't talk to strangers. I've been studying the barriers for a decade now. There are endless things to worry about, right? You worry, am I gonna like the person that I'm talking to? More importantly, will they like me? Will I be imposing on them or bothering them? Will we run out of things to say? But anyone can do this even if you're an introvert like me. And here are some things that I want you to know. First, I want you to know that your fears are shared by practically everybody, even people that outwardly seem very confident. And it's funny, actually, because in most domains, people think that they're better than average. We think that we're better drivers, we think we're better at getting along with people, but in the social domain, we think we're doing worse than our peers are. But we can't all be doing worse than average, can we? So statistically speaking, most of you in this room are at least at the average in terms of social skills. That's pretty comforting, right? Second, and more importantly, I want you to know that these fears are completely overblown. So time after time and study after study, I've asked people to predict what will happen when they talk to a stranger. Then I actually make them talk to a stranger and report back on how it's gone. And consistently, people say that it didn't go just a little better than they thought. It went a lot better than they thought. And all those things that they worried about didn't really happen. So for example, my colleagues and I have found evidence for something called the liking gap. So many people worry that the person they talked to didn't like them. So we've talked about this liking gap, which is the difference between how much you think someone liked you and how much they actually liked you. And we find essentially that people like you more than you think. And finally, I want you to know that talking to strangers is something that you can get better at. It's surprisingly hard to learn that when you have a chat with a stranger, the average is a pleasant conversation. It's not an exception. It's easy to think that each conversation partner is unique and that the success of the conversation comes down to that particular person. And so I thought for a really long time, how can I help people see that this pattern is generally positive? And I concluded that I had to get people to talk to lots of strangers in a short period of time. But how the heck am I going to do that when people don't want to talk to even one stranger? And so eventually I came up with the idea of creating a talking to strangers scavenger hunt game, which people played on their phone. And so every day, participants had to carry out at least one mission that involved talking to someone who matched a description, like someone wearing a hat or someone drinking a coffee. And after playing the game and talking to strangers for a week, people felt more confident in their conversational abilities and less worried about being rejected, which, by the way, happens a lot less often than you might think. Now, these changes occur gradually over the course of time, and so the takeaway here is that practice really does make perfect. Now, I was personally recently reminded of how far I've come. As I mentioned, I'm a big introvert, and I used my talking to strangers superpower recently. I was at a performance, and I asked an entire row of audience members to get up and move over so that a woman who was in some distress could sit on the aisle seat so that she could feel that she was able to leave if she needed to. And the woman's husband thanked me and said he could never have done what I did. And at that moment, I realized past Gillian couldn't have done it either. So, why not have a go? It might feel awkward at first, that's totally normal, but I assure you it will go better than you think, and that it will get easier over time with practice. And I want you to talk to strangers because I believe that it makes the world a better place. So talking to strangers makes the world a better place because it humanizes other people. Having a minimal social interaction with a stranger acknowledges your shared humanity. When I walked in the park during the March 2020 lockdown and shared a smile or a wave or a hello with my neighbors, I felt like we were just seeing each other and acknowledging this, crazy thing that we're living through and sharing a message that we're going to be okay. And this humanization is crucial to our civic society. Throughout history, dehumanization has been used as a way to encourage people to do awful things that they wouldn't do to a fellow human. Talking to strangers also makes the world a better place because it spreads kindness. So as Claudia mentioned, the University of Sussex teamed up with BBC Radio 4 to run the world's largest public science project studying kindness. And we received over 60,000 responses from across the UK and around the world. We asked people lots of questions, but one of them was about the last time that someone had been kind to them. And 10% of people said that the most recent act of kindness had come from a stranger. And this word cloud shows the most common responses, and you can see things like people sharing unexpired parking tickets or helping carry a heavy bag of groceries. But you can also see lots of examples of minimal social interaction. So you can see that people clearly value a smile, a compliment, a friendly chat, and see these things as an act of kindness. Now, these are small, humanizing acts that cost us little time, but can be more meaningful than we realize. So if talking to strangers seems daunting to you, it might help to think that by doing so, you could give someone the gift of being seen. And for those of you who aren't daunted by the idea of talking to strangers, I'm sure there's some of you, you might want to think about whether you can wield your superpower more deliberately. Could you reach out to welcome the new person? Could you reach out to someone who might be feeling lonely, or someone who might especially benefit from a message of inclusion? I'm not suggesting you do it out of pity. Do it because it's human and it's kind. It's been 15 years now since I talked to the lady with the cupcake in Toronto. That conversation with a stranger literally changed my life because it affected the shape of my academic career. The conversation with the cellist also changed my life, as did several other conversations that I can think of, including one at a conference, that eventually led to me working at the University of Sussex, where I'm now director, as Claudia said, of the Sussex Center for Research on Kindness. I am still an introvert, but at the same time, I am someone who loves talking to strangers. I love the feeling of walking around my neighborhood or across campus and seeing faces that have evolved from strangers to my community. I believe each of us can make the world a little friendlier, a little more trusting, and a little better, and that it could all start with something as small as a hello. Thank you.